Alright, I'd like to show you a method I like for growing oyster mushrooms at home. You'll need two 5-gallon buckets. I use paint buckets because they're pretty easy to come by. Some people worry that there's going to be contaminants in it, but the mushrooms don't grow on the plastic. Once you've cleaned the plastic, any residue that's on it really is not going to affect your mushrooms, especially after the first grow, because oyster mycelium breaks down complex carbohydrates and uses it as part of its food. Anyway, you get a 5-gallon bucket, and then below the line of the upper reinforcements that the handle holds onto, you're going to drill several holes. I use about 1 inch. A little bit bigger might be good. A little bit smaller is okay, but you don't want to go too small, because this is where the mushrooms are going to come out. And you only want them on the sides, although you do want a couple close to the bottom. And you're only going to put them on one of the 2 buckets that you'll use, and I'll show you why after a bit. Okay, I've drilled the holes and I'm staggering them about every 6 to 8 inches, like this. Doesn't have to be perfect all the way around. And then I have one hole close to the bottom, and this is more of a drainage hole than anything else. And I probably should have used a smaller diameter drill to make the hole, like a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch hole would have been fine, but I'm too lazy. Anyway, so there you have the bucket. I'll clean it out a bit. You don't want a lot of holes, but you want enough that there'll be good air exchange in the straw, and this will be where your mushrooms will grow. So I like to use, I've got a little scalpel, or you can use an X-Acto, or just any sharp knife to just kind of, let's see if I can get where that's seen, yeah, just to clean up the holes. Because there tends to be a bit of, I don't know what you'd call it, plastic burrs around the edges of the hole. So anyway, you want to make sure you have good clean openings so you don't end up with plastic in your mushrooms. Alright, you want to make sure that the outside as well as the inside of the bucket are nice and clean, of the one with the holes in it, and the inside of your second bucket is clean. And you're going to put you're going to put the white bucket inside of this one, and then I'm going to fill this up with water, and I'm going to add some bleach, like a cup of bleach for the 5 gallons, and I'm going to let it soak for a couple of hours to thoroughly sterilize the inside of this. Alright, next we need some straw cut into about 4 to 6 inch lengths. Wheat straw is best. I have a bale of wheat straw that I bought at the local feed and seed place. You could probably find some place that sells straw on Craigslist if you don't already know where to get it. And it's a little awkward to work with, but what you do is get a pair of clippers and just kind of cut it into 6-inch lengths. And you're going to want to fill a 5-gallon bucket pretty full, and actually a little bit packed with straw for, a batch in a 5-gallon bucket. This is a messy process. Do it outside or put down plastic, because there'll be a lot of spillage. Straw is messy stuff until it gets wet. You want good, clean, dry straw. Don't let it sit on the ground, because it will rot or mold, and then it'll be full of mold spores, which will make it harder to get a good, clean grow. Alright, once you've got a bucket full of chopped up straw, then we're going to pasteurize it. And there's a number of different ways of pasteurizing your straw, preparing it and pasteurizing it. And I'm going to use cooking. You can also use hydrated lime to raise the pH. There are other chemicals you can use, but I try to avoid using chemical means personally. Alright, the next step is to prepare the straw. And you'll need as large a pan as you've got. This is the largest pan I've got. Stuff it full of straw and fill it with hot tap water. And then you're going to want to add some gypsum. I put this gypsum in an old vitamin bottle just for convenience because it's got this cool flip-up lid that makes it easy to measure the gypsum, and add, I don't know, a couple of teaspoons per couple gallons worth of straw. These are half. Biggest spoon I can get in here is a half a teaspoon, so anyway, add that in. Let me get something to break that up a little bit. Ooh, it's hot. Spoon here. And get to mix in and disperse. You don't want it all in one spot. Gypsum provides sulfur and other ingredients, if you will, that aid in the fruiting of the mushrooms. Once you get this all in here, put a lid, put a plate or something on top to weight it down so that all the straw is submerged. And then you'll need some kind of weight to put on top of that to keep it down, and I'll do that in a second because I got to put this up on the burner. Alright, once the straw has soaked for a couple of hours, then you want to put it on the heat and bring it up to about 170 to 175, and then hold it there for 75 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes. You need a good thermometer, an accurate thermometer. You do not want to go over 180 because then you get into sterilizing it and killing the beneficial bacteria that you want to survive this process, and you make the straw much more susceptible to contamination or any media. So that's the pasteurization process. So after the 75 minutes are up, we're going to drain this off, and I'm going to have to do actually several batches to fill up a 5-gallon bucket because I don't have a pan big enough to hold 5 gallons worth of straw. But so yeah, I'll show you this as I'm draining it. Okay, so I'm just going to let this cool and ventilate for about an hour or so, and then I'll put this part in the bucket. Alright, as each load of straw is cooled and dried off a bit, I'm going to be mixing it with mycelium on grain. I did this is the spawn that we're going to add to the before I open this up. I'm going to rinse my hands off real quick with some alcohol. It's not absolutely necessary, but I want to minimize contamination, so I'm using gloves, as you can see. Let's see, let's put this over here. A little bit better view. So I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of this grain in here with the straw. And add more straw. Basically you want about a 2-inch thick layer of straw for each addition of grain. And, or of spawn, I guess I should say. Now with most types of substrate, the straw being the substrate, you don't want to pack it down, but with the straw, you actually kind of want to pack it down. Good and tight. And then I'll just put the lid on until I get ready to do the next layer. Okay, just finishing up filling this up. Actually, I won't use up the rest of that. Don't need to have any left over. Interesting. Okay. So, you want to fill it up nice and full, pack it down a little bit, but you don't want much space on top. And then seal the top bucket up. Okay, and then use a napkin or a coffee filter or something like that. That's not an airtight seal, but it'll allow for some air exchange. And take another napkin and kind of fold it up and put it in between so that there's a very tiny gap between the buckets, just enough for an air exchange. You don't want a lot of air flowing through there, but just enough to keep the carbon dioxide level inside from getting too high. And then, now this will sit for several days, and I'll check it periodically to see how myceliated it is. And once it's fully myceliated, then we'll take this bucket out and we'll get to see the mushrooms grow out. So here we are after 10 days. It's the 10th of May. Or no, it's the 12th of May. I'm sorry. So it's been 10 days. And as you can see, the straw is pretty much completely encased in mycelium. So now it's time to lift this out. And as you can see, the mycelium has actually started growing out of the holes. The holes are all packed with mycelium. And so now I'll take the bucket, another bucket, turn it upside down, and stack the two on top of each other. It's a good idea not to leave your bucket on the floor, because most of the contaminant spores tend to settle to the floor, and so if you have a mycelium growing project on the floor, it's much more likely to be contaminated. Of course, once the the substrate, in this case the straw, is fully myceliated, nothing else can get a foothold. But just to be on the safe side, that, and you're going to have mushrooms growing out of these holes. And so I'll just go by here a couple of times a day with a little mister, and I'm just going to do it right now real quick, just to demonstrate. You do this a couple of times a day, Just give all the holes a quick mist so they don't get too dry. In a few days we should have mushrooms coming out. So here we are on the 18th, and as you can see, some of these clusters are starting to really take shape. Nothing there yet, but this one is getting interesting. We should have harvestable mushrooms in a couple more days. Alright, so we're about ready to harvest some of the mushrooms from the first flush, and I'm going to this will be the end of the video. As you can see, you can get some pretty huge oyster mushrooms out of one of these buckets, and like I say, this is the first of probably 3 or 4 flushes. So there you go. That's how you grow oyster mushrooms at home.